per se limits and so forth. That's completely out of scope for this bill. But I would advise you to give your information to the Justice Committee for the study of C-46, which we start next week. You've also asked for criminal to stop ongoing arrests and so forth, leading up to legalization. Of course, that is way out of scope for this committee itself. But what I'd like to ask you about is the provisions in this bill for personal cultivation. Do you see those as problematic? Do you see as a source of diversion to the criminal market? And you know, what are your thoughts in terms of the number of plants and the maximum heights of the plants?
So, with regards to personal cultivation for adult use, the Cannabis Act does recommend a 4-plant limit for individuals over the age of 18 in a single household. While that is a step forward to 0 plants, some of the limitations are pretty arbitrary with regards to how the plant actually grows and how adults can manage this type of growth. I mean, currently under the Cannabis Act, plants can be no longer or no taller than 1 meter, which is very restrictive with regards to certain strains of plants that may just by nature grow more robust than that limit. And Maurice, would you like to add anything?
I think that at a limit of 4 plants is quite low and avoids that risk of diversion. Of course, anything that you put together, people will be right behind it, finding a loophole, whether it's making the plant grow 5 meters horizontally instead of vertically, which would avoid the whole height limitation, or people pooling resources if they have a neighbor who doesn't grow it. Well, hey, can I put 4 plants in your backyard? So you make something and within 5 minutes someone finds a workaround, but definitely home growing must be permitted under the Act, I think, for people to have the choice. If they do not believe in the government system, they can make it themselves. People grow tomatoes. You're allowed to grow, I'm not sure how many plants, but you can grow your own tobacco. You can make your own wine. You can make your own beer. Why would marijuana be different? I think the limits are kind of low in my opinion, but I guess you got to find a happy medium. We'll start with 4. I think all of the measures in this bill need to be revisited as well. As we're talking about flying the plane while we're building it, well, we're definitely doing that here as well. We're in uncharted waters. Legal marijuana is hardly existing in the whole planet. So we have to be able to revisit these measures down the road, perhaps increase the number of plants permitted, find other measures. I know that in the United States they go by square footage of canopy, so you can have 100 plants that fit in a 1 meter by 1 meter, or you can have 1 plant that's the size of a Christmas tree. So going by the numbers of plants may not be the best gauge to achieve the objective you're looking for.
I wonder if Professor Kamen or Mr. Hartman, would you like to comment on the possible diversion from a personal cultivation scenario to the criminal market?
Certainly. As I indicated previously, we used to, in the caregiver market, which is not part of the regulated market, allow up to 99 plants per individual. And you could, as Mr. St-Maurice indicated, have joint relationships with people around you that they give you their right to grow their plants, et cetera. And what we found was that that was a significant opportunity for diversion that was problematic. As a result of that, last year our legislature reduced the number of plants that you could have in the home to 12, period, regardless of how many caregivers you have. And what I would tell you, I don't know what the right number is, but having bright line tests that law enforcement can look to and be able to clearly identify what's going on with the situation and enforce the laws and regulations is incredibly important as you think about your legislation.
This height limit, is that meaningful? Is there any correlation to the yield of a plant to its height?
Depending on the strain, a 1 meter plant can produce between 0 grams to several hundred grams, depending on how it's grown, how it's pruned, the talents of the person growing it, the strain of marijuana in particular. I mean, if you have a 1 meter high plant and you forget to water it and it dies, well, your basic yield is 0. So it is arbitrary. I guess you got to start somewhere. But I do find it a little humorous when you put that limit of 1 meter. I can imagine law enforcement going around with their tape measure and, oh, I'm sorry, you're 1 centimeter over. Are they going to cut that centimeter off and seize it, or are they going to take the whole plant as a result? So it is a little Kafkaesque, if you ask me, as to have set it at that arbitrary level.
That completes our